The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the halls of Nexus Prime. Jake Morrison walked through them with steady steps, his black diplomatic uniform looking plain and simple compared to the bright robes and strange clothing worn by the alien beings around him. The chamber was huge, bigger than any building Jake had ever seen on Earth. The ceiling stretched up so high that clouds formed near the top. Rows and rows of seats filled the space, each one designed for a different alien species. Some seats were filled with water for the fish-like Aquarians. Others glowed with heat for the rock creatures from the volcanic worlds. A few seats even floated in the air for beings made of pure energy. Jake looked around and found his seat. It was just one simple chair in a corner, marked with a small sign that said, Human Representative. Around him, thousands of alien beings chittered, clicked, hummed, and made sounds he could not understand. His translation device worked hard to turn all the noise into words he could hear. The emergency session will now begin, announced Speaker Seth Kalar. The giant crystal being stood at the center of the chamber, his body catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. His voice was like the sound of breaking glass, but somehow musical. Jake sat down and placed his hands on his knees. He had been Earth's ambassador to the galaxy for 3 years now. In that time, he had learned that most alien species thought humans were too young, too fast, and too dangerous. Today, he was about to find out just how much they disliked humanity's way of doing things. We gather today to address serious charges against the human species, Speaker Seth Kalar continued. His crystal form turned toward Jake, and light flashed from what might have been eyes. 3 respected civilizations have brought complaints against human expansion into space they consider their own. The first to speak was Ambassador Quillinosh of the Velthari Empire. She looked like a tall, thin woman made of clear glass, but Jake knew she was thousands of years old. Her people had been traveling between stars since before humans discovered fire. Honored Consul, she began, her voice like the tinkling of tiny bells. The humans have broken the ancient laws of expansion. For 3,000 years, my people have watched over the Kepler sector. We placed monitoring stations there. We studied the worlds. We planned for future development. She pointed one long, transparent finger at Jake. Then these humans arrived 50 years ago and simply began building cities without asking anyone. They terraformed planets we were still studying. They built space stations and systems we had marked for our own use. This cannot be allowed. Murmurs of agreement came from many of the alien delegates. Jake noticed that most of the sounds came from the older species, the ones who had been in space for thousands or millions of years. Next came General Throkmer of the Gornak Empire. He was massive, even sitting down. His gray skin looked like stone, and his 4 arms were each as thick as Jake's whole body. When he spoke, his voice was like an earthquake. The Gornak Empire has claimed the Vanguard system for 800 years, he rumbled. Our warriors surveyed those worlds. Our battle fleets marked them for future conquest. The humans had no right to build their colonies there. He slammed one huge fist on his chair's armrest, and the sound echoed through the chamber. These soft creatures dare to put up defenses against us. They build walls and weapons on worlds that belong to the Gornak. This is an insult that demands punishment. More agreement came from the assembled aliens. Jake could see that many species were nodding, clicking, or flashing lights in ways that meant they supported the complaints. The third speaker was the strangest of all. The ethereal collective's representative did not have a body that Jake could see clearly. It was more like a shadow that moved and spoke without making sound. Instead, its words appeared directly in everyone's mind through telepathy. The humans bring chaos, the mind voice said, and Jake felt the words like cold fingers in his brain. Their thoughts are loud and wild. They disrupt the peaceful meditation of our kind. For 10,000 years, we have maintained harmony in the sectors near our space. Human mental noise makes it impossible for us to achieve the deep contemplation our species requires. The shadow thing turned toward Jake, and he felt its attention like a heavy weight. Worse, their chaotic thinking patterns are spreading to other young species. The careful order we have built over millions of years is being destroyed by their primitive minds. When the ethereal finished speaking, the chamber fell quiet for a moment. Jake could feel the weight of thousands of alien eyes, sensors, and other kinds of perception focused on him. Some of the looks felt curious. Most felt angry or disgusted. Speaker Zeth Kalar raised one crystal arm. The charges have been made clear. The human species stands accused of unlawful expansion, disregard for ancient territorial claims, and disruption of galactic harmony. He turned to Jake with what passed for a smile among his people. The human representative may now offer his species formal apology and agree to the restrictions we will place on further human expansion. Jake had been expecting this moment for weeks. Earth's government had sent him detailed instructions on how to handle the situation. He was supposed to apologize, promise to be more careful in the future, and accept whatever limits the Council wanted to put on human colonies. Instead, Jake Morrison stood up slowly and smiled. The smile was not what anyone expected. It was not the nervous smile of someone about to beg for forgiveness. It was not the sad smile of someone accepting defeat. It was the confident smile of someone who knew something the rest of the room did not. "Honored delegates," Jake said, his voice clear and steady, "I want to thank you for this opportunity to address your concerns about human expansion." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small device. With the press of a button, a three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared in the air above his head. The map showed all the territories claimed by different alien species in red, and all the human colonies as small blue dots. "I have listened carefully to your complaints," Jake continued, still smiling, "and I think it's time we had an honest conversation about what's really happening out there among the stars." The chamber was completely silent now. Even the atmospheric systems seemed to have stopped making noise. Every being in the massive room was focused on the lone human standing in his simple black uniform. Jake looked around at all the alien faces. Energy patterns and sensor clusters pointed in his direction. His smile grew wider. "Let me start by telling you exactly what your 3,000 years of monitoring the Kepler sector actually accomplished." Jake pressed another button on his device, and the galaxy map zoomed in on the Kepler sector. The display showed a detailed timeline of what had happened in that region of space over the past 3,000 years. "Ambassador Cullinesh," Jake said, turning to face the glass-like alien woman, "your people placed exactly 17 monitoring stations in the Kepler sector 3,000 years ago. According to your own records, which I was able to access through the Council's public database, these stations sent reports back to your homeworld once every 50 years. The map highlighted each monitoring station with a small green dot. Jake touched his device again, and the timeline began to move forward through the years. For the first 1,000 years, your people received regular reports about planetary conditions, weather patterns, and resource surveys. Very detailed work. Very thorough. Jake's voice stayed polite, but there was something sharp underneath it. Then something interesting happened. The timeline reached a point about 2,000 years ago, and many of the green dots began to turn red. Your monitoring stations started going dark. Not because they were destroyed or damaged, but because your people stopped maintaining them. The reports became less frequent, once every 100 years, then once every 200. By the time humans arrived in the Kepler sector, only 3 of your 17 stations were still working. Ambassador Kulinash made a sound like wind blowing through crystal chimes. The stations served their purpose. We gathered the information we needed. Did you? Jake asked. He touched his device again, and the map showed what the Velthari had actually done with all that information. In 3,000 years of monitoring, your people visited exactly 4 planets in person. You built permanent structures on 0 planets. You terraformed 0 worlds. You established 0 colonies. The chamber was completely quiet. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. So when you say humans violated your territorial claims, what you really mean is that we built cities on worlds you spent 3,000 years thinking about maybe visiting someday. He turned to face General Throckmer, a massive stone-skinned warrior. Now let's talk about the Gornak Empire's claims to the Vanguard system. The map shifted to show a different part of space. This time, the timeline went back 800 years. General, your people's battle fleets did indeed survey the Vanguard system 800 years ago. Very impressive ships, by the way. I've seen the recordings your scouts made. Jake smiled again, and this time there was something almost friendly about it. Your warriors identified 17 habitable worlds and classified them as suitable for future conquest. The display showed the paths the Gornak fleets had taken through the system, highlighting each world they had examined. Future conquest. Jake repeated, I find that phrase fascinating, because according to your own military records, the Gornak Empire has been planning this future conquest for 800 years now. More red dots appeared on the map, showing where Gornak warning beacons had been placed around the system. You put up warning beacons telling other species to stay away. You filed the proper territorial claims with the Galactic Council. You even assigned fleet numbers to the invasion forces that would someday conquer these worlds. Jake paused, letting the information sink in. But you never actually sent those fleets, did you? General Throckmer's 4 hands clenched into fists. The timing was not right. Other campaigns took priority. 800 years, General. 800 years of not the right time. Jake's voice grew stronger. Do you know what humans accomplished? In 800 years, we went from living in caves to building cities. We learned to farm, to write, to make tools from metal. We built ships that could cross oceans. The map zoomed out to show both the Kepler sector and the Vanguard system, along with several other regions of space. But here's what really interests. Jake continued. Both of your civilizations, the Velthari and the Gornak, have controlled hundreds of star systems for thousands of years. You have access to technologies that humans can barely understand. You have resources beyond our wildest dreams. The display now showed a comparison between the territories controlled by the older alien civilizations and what they had actually done with those territories. The Velthari Empire controls 437 star systems. Of those, you have actually developed and colonized 89. The rest you're still studying or preparing for future development. Ambassador Kulinash began to glow brighter, a sign of anger among her people. Proper development takes time. We do not rush into mistakes like younger species. The Gornak Empire, Jake continued, ignoring her protest, controls 612 star systems. You have fully developed exactly 153 of them. The others are designated as future expansion zones or strategic reserves. He turned to address the entire chamber now, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the massive room. Do you see the pattern here? The most powerful civilizations in the galaxy are sitting on vast amounts of empty space, doing nothing with it while claiming it belongs to them. The ethereal collective's mind speaker projected waves of disapproval. That made several delegates wince. The Shadow Thing's thoughts appeared in everyone's head like ice water. Order must be maintained. Chaos brings destruction. The young species do not understand the dangers of rapid expansion. Jake turned toward the telepathic being, and for a moment, his smile disappeared entirely. "Let's talk about your people's idea of order," he said quietly. "The ethereal collective has spent 10,000 years creating what you call harmony zones around your territory. Regions of space where your telepathic influence keeps other species calm and peaceful." A map changed again, showing the areas around ethereal space. Large purple zones spread out from their home systems like an infection. Within these harmony zones, scientific advancement has slowed to almost nothing. Exploration has stopped completely. The species under your influence spend most of their time in meditation and contemplation instead of building or creating anything new. Jake's voice grew colder. "You call it harmony, but what it really is stagnation. You've turned entire civilizations into your personal meditation garden, keeping them quiet and still so they don't disturb your thinking." The shadow being projected more waves of anger, but Jake wasn't finished. "The most interesting part is what happens when species leave your harmony zones. Suddenly, they start inventing new technologies again. They begin exploring. They create art and music and literature." Jake looked directly at where he thought the ethereal center might be. Almost like your harmony was actually holding them back. Now the murmurs in the chamber were different. Jake could hear uncertainty in the alien voices, doubt creeping into their sounds of agreement. "So let me see if I understand the situation correctly," Jake said, addressing the entire council again. "The three most powerful civilizations in the galaxy are upset because humans are actually using empty space instead of just claiming it and forgetting about it." He spread his arms wide, gesturing to all the assembled aliens. "You've had millions of years to explore this galaxy. Millions of years to build and create and discover. And what have you done with all that time?" The chamber was silent again, but this time the silence felt different. It felt heavy with questions that no one wanted to ask. Jake's smile returned, but now it was sad rather than confident. "You've built the most elaborate bureaucracy in the history of the universe. You've created rules and procedures for everything, except actually doing anything. You've spent more time arguing about who owns empty space than you've spent filling it with life." He looked around at all the alien faces staring at him. "And now you're angry because humans looked at all your empty claims and decided to do something useful with them." Speaker Zeth Kalar's crystal body began to vibrate, creating a low humming sound that filled the chamber. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of ancient authority. "The human delegate forgets his place," the crystal being said. "Age brings wisdom. Experience teaches caution. Your species' youth blinds you to the dangers of hasty action." Jake turned to face the speaker directly, and his smile became something altogether different. It was the smile of a predator who had been waiting for exactly this moment. "Age brings wisdom?" Jake repeated slowly. "Let me tell you about the wisdom that age has brought to this galaxy." He touched his device again, and the display changed to show technological development timelines for different species. The lines stretched across thousands and millions of years, showing how long each civilization had taken to achieve basic milestones. The Velthari took 12,000 years to develop faster-than-light travel after they first reached their own moon. 12,000 years to figure out how to leave their home system. Jake's voice stayed calm, but there was steel underneath it. During that same period of time, they discovered nuclear energy, lost the knowledge, rediscovered it, lost it again, and rediscovered it a third time. Ambassador Kulinash made a sound like breaking glass. "We were careful. We studied the dangers. We avoided the mistakes that destroy civilizations." "Did you?" Jake asked. "Or did you just spend 12,000 years being afraid to try anything new?" The timeline display zoomed in on the Velthari development period, showing long gaps where no progress was made at all. Your own historians write about the great debates that lasted for centuries. Should we build faster ships? Should we visit other worlds? Should we risk leaving our safe, comfortable home system? Jake shook his head. 2,000 years spent arguing about whether space travel was morally acceptable. 3,000 years of committee meetings to decide if other planets might have dangerous life forms. He turned to General Throckmer. The Gornak Empire has an even more impressive record. You achieved spaceflight 8,000 years before you established your first colony outside your home system. 8,000 years of having the ability to travel to other worlds, and you just didn't. The massive alien warrior leaned forward. In his chair, the Gornik way is to plan carefully. We scout our enemies. We prepare for every possible threat. For 8,000 years? Jake's eyebrows went up. General, humans went from our first powered flight to landing on our moon in 66 years. From splitting the atom to building fusion reactors in less than a century. From inventing computers to creating artificial intelligence in 50 years. The display now showed a comparison between human technological development and that of the older alien species. The human line shot up like a rocket compared to the gentle slopes of the other civilizations. What you call careful planning, we call being paralyzed by fear. The ethereal collective's mind speaker projected waves of cold anger that made several delegates shiver. Its thoughts pressed into everyone's minds like freezing water. Speed is not wisdom. Haste leads to destruction. The young species always burn bright and die quickly. Jake laughed out loud, and the sound echoed through the chamber. Like a gunshot. Die quickly? Let me tell you about human survival, Shadow Thing. The disrespectful term made several aliens gasp in shock. No one talked to an ethereal that way. The display changed to show Earth's history, compressed into a timeline that fit. On the screen, humans have survived ice ages that lasted tens of thousands of years. We survived volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for decades. We survived plagues that killed half our population. We survived wars that covered entire continents. Jake's voice grew stronger with each word. And we did it all without telepathy, without crystal armor, without energy bodies that can't be hurt by physical weapons. He pointed at the shadow that represented the ethereal. Your people spent 15,000 years in preparation and meditation before they felt safe enough to leave their home system. 15,000 years of sitting in comfortable telepathic harmony, afraid that the universe might be too chaotic for your delicate minds. The chamber erupted into angry sounds as delegates from dozens of species began protesting Jake's words. Clicks, whistles, roars, and harmonic tones filled the air. The translation devices worked overtime to turn the noise into understandable complaints. Outrageous came through the translators. Insulting. Unacceptable. Remove him. Jake raised his voice over the noise. You want to talk about wisdom? Let me tell you what humans learned while you are all taking your careful, cautious, wise approach to everything. The display changed to show images from human space colonies. Cities built into asteroids. Farms growing on worlds that had been barren rock. Space elevators reaching from planetary surfaces to orbital stations. Fusion reactors powering entire star systems. We learned that the universe doesn't care about your committees. We learned that while you're having a 1,000-year debate about whether something is safe, someone else is going to figure out how to do it safely. Jake's voice cut through the alien protests like a knife. We learned that the biggest risk isn't making a mistake. The biggest risk is being too afraid to try anything at all. General Throckmer slammed all 4 of his massive fists on his chair's armrests. The sound was like thunder, and several smaller aliens jumped in their seats. Your arrogance will destroy you, the Gornik general roared. The galaxy is full of dangers you cannot imagine. Ancient evils sleep between the stars. Technologies that could end all life if misused. Ancient evils? Jake asked, and his smile became mocking. You mean like the Void Hunters that your people spent 3,000 years hiding from instead of fighting? The same Void Hunters that humans encountered last year and defeated in 6 months? The chamber went dead silent. The Void Hunters were a legendary threat, ancient machines that consumed entire star systems. Most species spoke of them only in whispers. Or maybe you mean the stellar plague that the ethereal collective has been studying for 5,000 years without finding a cure. The same plague that human scientists figured out how to stop in 18 months? Ambassador Kulinash's glass-like form began to flicker with agitation. Impossible. The stellar plague cannot be cured. Our greatest minds have worked on it for millennia. Your greatest minds spent 5,000 years trying to understand it perfectly before doing anything about it. Jake shot back. Human scientists took a different approach. We started with incomplete knowledge and improved our solutions as we learned more. We saved 17 star systems while your people were still debating the theoretical implications. The ethereals. Mind voice became a cold whisper in everyone's thoughts. The humans are reckless. They act without understanding. They will bring catastrophe. Jake turned toward the shadow being with fire in his eyes. We will bring change. And that terrifies you more than any ancient evil ever could. He gestured to the entire chamber, addressing every alien delegate at once. You've built a galaxy where nothing changes, where the same species control the same territories for millions of years, where new ideas are dangerous and new approaches are forbidden, where young civilizations are told to sit down, shut up, and wait their turn. The display now showed a map of the entire galaxy, with vast regions marked as restricted, claimed but undeveloped, or under study. You call it stability. You call it wisdom. You call it the natural order. Jake's voice dropped to barely, above a whisper, forcing everyone to lean forward to hear him. But what you've really built is the biggest, most elaborate prison in the history of the universe. And you've locked yourselves inside it. The silence that followed was different from all the others. This wasn't the silence of shock or anger. This was the silence of beings who were beginning to understand something they didn't want to face. Jake looked around at all the alien faces. Sensors and energy patterns focused on him. The worst part is, you've convinced yourselves that your prison is paradise. The silence stretched for long seconds until Speaker Zethkalar's crystal form began to pulse with angry light. The rainbow patterns dancing across the chamber walls turned harsh and sharp. Enough! The speaker's voice rang out like breaking mountains. The human delegate has shown nothing but disrespect for this ancient institution. We will now proceed to vote on the restrictions that will limit human expansion and teach your species proper respect for galactic order. Jake reached into his diplomatic case and pulled out a sealed document. The simple paper folder looked tiny in his hands compared to the massive alien technology surrounding him. That won't be necessary, Jake said quietly. Every sound in the chamber stopped. Even the atmospheric systems seemed to pause. Thousands of alien eyes, sensors, and other forms of perception locked onto the lone human standing in the center of the massive room. This, Jake said, holding up the document, is humanity's official response to your accusations, your threats, and your proposed restrictions. He opened the folder and looked down at the single sheet of paper inside. His voice carried clearly through the translation systems to every corner of the chamber, to the Galactic Council and all member species. Humanity has carefully considered your concerns about our expansion into space you claim as your territory. We have reviewed your historical records, your territorial claims, and your demands for restrictions on human colonization. Jake looked. up from the paper and made eye contact with Speaker Zeth Kalar's crystal form. Our response is simple. We refuse. The words hit the chamber like a physical blow. Several smaller aliens actually fell out of their seats. Ambassador Kulinash made a sound like a crystal chandelier falling downstairs. Furthermore, Jake continued reading, effective immediately, humanity formally withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will no longer participate in an organization that mistakes endless bureaucracy for governance and treats the development of empty worlds as a crime against nature. General Throckmur rose to his full enormous height, his stone-like skin turning darker with rage. You cannot simply leave. The Council's authority extends to all spacefaring species. Jake folded the document and put it back in his case. Watch us. The ethereal collective's mind speaker projected waves of psychic force that made half the delegates grab their heads in pain. Its thoughts crashed into everyone's minds like ice storms. This is madness. The natural order cannot be broken. Chaos will consume everything. Your natural order, Jake replied calmly, is a million-year-old mistake that we're finally going to fix. He activated his display device one last time. The holographic map showed the entire galaxy, but now it looked different. The human colonies were highlighted in bright blue, and new information appeared next to each one. These are the human colonies you want us to abandon, Jake said. Let me tell you what we've accomplished on the worlds you've been ignoring for thousands of years. The map zoomed in on the Kepler sector, showing the worlds the Velthari had been monitoring for 3 millennia. New Boston, established on Kepler 442b 3 years ago. Population, 2 million humans and 50,000 aliens from 12 different species who chose to live there. The planet now produces enough food to feed 15 star systems, and has become the major trading hub for this entire region. Ambassador Kulinash's glass form flickered rapidly. Impossible. That world was classified as marginal for agriculture by people who never actually tried to grow anything on it, Jake replied. Human terraforming techniques turned it into one of the most fertile worlds in the galaxy. The display moved to another world. New Chicago on Kepler 438b, population 5 million. Home to the largest university in this sector, with students from 37 different species. They're working together on technologies that your people said were theoretically impossible. More worlds appeared on the display, each one showing thriving cities, space elevators, orbital habitats, and industrial complexes that dwarfed anything the older civilizations had built. Port Liberty in the Vanguard system. The Gornak Empire claimed this system, but never visited it. Now it's home to 8 million beings and produces more advanced starships than any other single location in the galaxy. General Throckmur's 4, hands clenched into fists. Those are our worlds. We marked them for conquest. 800 years ago, Jake reminded him. We got tired of waiting for you to actually do something with them. He turned to address the entire chamber again. Every human colony is open to any species that wants to trade, learn, or simply visit. We don't require centuries of bureaucratic approval. We don't demand tribute or submission. We just ask that visitors follow basic rules about not harming others. The map pulled back to show trade routes connecting human colonies to alien worlds. The routes formed a growing network that was spreading across the galaxy. In the 5 years since humans began serious colonization, trade in our sectors has increased by 400%. Scientific discoveries have accelerated beyond anything seen in the last 1,000 years. 17 new technologies have been developed through cooperation between human and alien researchers. Jake looked around at the alien delegates, many of whom were staring at the trade data with obvious surprise. But here's the most important part, he continued. We're not stopping. The colonies you want us to abandon are staying exactly where they are, The expansion you want us to halt is going to continue. The changes you're afraid of are already happening. The ethereal's mind voice became a whisper of pure cold. You will bring war. The old powers will not allow this challenge to their authority. Jake smiled one final time, and this smile was different from all the others. It wasn't confident or mocking or predatory. It was the smile of someone who had just realized he was completely free. Then they're welcome to try stopping us. He walked toward the chamber's exit, his footsteps echoing in the absolute silence. When he reached the massive doors, Jake turned back to face the assembled representatives of 47 alien civilizations. I want to make something clear before I leave, he said. Humanity doesn't want to conquer anyone. We don't want to rule the galaxy or destroy your civilizations. We just want the freedom to grow and build and explore without asking permission from species that have forgotten how to dream. The doors began to open behind him with their deep rumbling sound. Any species that wants to work with us, trade with us, or learn from us is welcome to contact us directly. We'll be the ones actually doing things instead of talking about doing things. Jake stepped toward the exit and paused one more time. Double quotes. Oh, and one more thing. Those ancient evils you're all so afraid of? The ones you've been hiding from and studying for thousands of years? We'll handle those too. It's what humans do. We solve problems instead of filing reports about them. He walked through the doors, leaving behind the most powerful political institution in galactic history. The chamber remained silent for nearly 10 minutes after the doors closed. Finally, Speaker Zeth Kalar found his voice. This session is adjourned. In the weeks that followed, 23 species quietly established direct diplomatic relations with human colonies. The Galactic Council spent months debating the legal implications of humanity's withdrawal, and human ships continued to launch toward empty systems that had been claimed by civilizations too, afraid to actually visit them. The age of asking permission was over. The age of human expansion had truly begun, and across the galaxy, young civilizations who had been told to wait their turn began to wonder if maybe they didn't have to wait after all.